What's up, you guys? It's Gavin here, back with another fantasy football video. Today I'm super excited. We're going to be diving into my first episode of post-draft running back rankings, taking a look at this position as a whole, and now that we have landing spots and team situations figured out here, reassessing this board and looking at who's going to be able to get on the field fastest, because that's such a huge part of the running back position, the position in the National Football League with the shortest shelf life, the least amount of opportunity for longevity. So we got to find those names that are going to get out there within the next season or two and put up some decent production, or at least have an opportunity with low barriers to entry to getting out there on that field. So again, I'm super excited for today's episode. Let's not waste any more time and let's dive in to my top running back in this year's draft class. All right, as always, if you guys are new around here, make sure to drop down, click that subscribe button, turn the bell on so you're never late for an episode, and go check out all the links in the description of today's video. It helps out the channel a lot and helps us grow the community. In particular, if you want to be a direct member of the SFS community, you can join our Discord server. That, of course, is in the description with all those other links, and you can chat with me, talk Dynasty Fantasy Football, regular season, Redraft Fantasy Football, any advice or NFL news, whatever it is. I'm here to talk to you guys and be an interactive source and obviously give you guys all the information or, my takes and the way I see things. So Breece Hall remains my top running back on the list here after the draft. The first running back taken off the board, high draft capital in the second round. The Jets came up to get him. He supposedly told a reporter, or he did tell a reporter, that the Jets told him that they were trying to trade up and get him at the end of round one. Things didn't work out, but they ended up being able to come back and grab him again at the top of the second round. So it's a big deal that he is the first running back taken here in similar range to Javonte Williams from last season. So we didn't see any running backs go in round one last year, this year. Last year we had Travis Etienne and Najee Harris be in that group. But at 6'1", 220, Breece Hall has all of the tools that you need. Very patient runner behind the line of scrimmage, and I found that when on tape at Iowa State, when he finds the hole he wants to go through, he explodes through it with that 4.39 speed. Again, fantastic size, 6'1", 220, is going to give you that workhorse build in a player that can stand up to a high level of touches. Now, the one red flag I do have in this New York Jets situation is Michael Carter. I have my reservations about how much work he's going to get on third down, on how much reception value Michael Carter can eat into Breece Hall's workload here, because that's a big deal. Receptions are going to give Breece or any fantasy running back the opportunity for optimal efficiency first and foremost. So you're going to get more yards per reception than you are yards per carry, and you're also going to get that boost in PPR for those touches if you're getting, whether it's half PPR or full PPR, those extra points. So that's definitely my biggest concern here with Breece Hall in this landing spot in New York. But what I do like is the attention being given to the offensive side of the football. Zach Wilson last year, Elijah Moore, again, Michael Carter, while it is eating into Breece Hall, it shows attention. You had Mekhi Becton, that's still kind of a mess right now. We don't know with all those rumors. But Elijah Vera Tucker, a pick last season. Now Garrett Wilson, again, plugging more into that offensive side of the ball, trying to get things balanced here and be no longer a one-dimensional football team, which has been a huge issue for the Jets for a very long time. So basically everything culminates here to Breece Hall being my top prospect in this draft. I think that his landing spot is just as good as the number 2 player on the board here. We're going to talk about that position right now, being Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks, another early second round draft pick. So Kenneth Walker's situation to me is something that's very, very interesting, because I think that he could have an opportunity with Pete Carroll being the head coach of this football team to be a ridiculously high volume workhorse in the Seattle offense. We've seen running backs have immense success here, whether that's beast mode a while back. You've got Chris Carson with his stretches of success. Rashad Penny has had flashes since he's been drafted, despite never really truly taking over, despite being a first-round pick at one point in time. He hasn't been able to take over. So Kenneth Walker, to me, has a lot of opportunity in this offense, but there's a lot of question marks, right? So we've got Chris Carson, that situation. Obviously, Chris Carson is a talented player. Now, he wildly exceeded his level of draft capital investment in terms of what he's given the Seahawks production-wise, but he had that injury last season to his neck, very significant. There's been talk he could retire, not return to the team. It held him out basically indefinitely last season, so you've got uncertainty with that in its own. Some people are just straight up assuming that he will not be a member of this football team going forward. I'm going to be a little bit more conservative with my evaluation of that situation because you don't know what's going to happen there. But what we do know is that Rashaad Penny is going to be in-house. He was re-signed by the Seahawks here, and he's going to have some sort of role. He earned the right to be able to eat somewhat into Kenneth Walker's workload here. So even if Walker is the lead back day one, week one in the opener this coming fall, I still expect to see a somewhat healthy dosage of Rashaad Penny, at least to start out this season until Kenneth Walker totally takes off and, has the opportunity to take this offense completely over. Now, as we saw last year, that is no guarantee. It's something that I kept wanting to jump the gun on with Javonte Williams week after week. I was just really hoping that the Broncos would cut him loose and, kind of put Melvin Gordon on the back burner. Of course, now they had to resign him and bring him back again for a year. But, these are kind of the imperfections in the situations, if you will, that you see with Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall having other significant players in the offense at the running back position that could potentially be digging into that level of production. So I have high levels of optimism for these players. I think they both have incredible ceilings, and these situations could turn out to be very, very beneficial. But they both are, again, imperfect in their own ways, and there are things that if I was picking at the top of the draft board this year, thankfully, in my very serious Dynasty League that I'm in, I basically sold out for last season, traded a lot of my draft capital away. I worked a little bit after the season finished up to recoup some of that capital so I could draft some developmental pieces for my bench. But I ended up going out and getting some big name players, and by luck and chance, or some combination of both, I ended up selling A.J. Brown in a first-round draft pick, which ended up being the 112 because, again, I sold out and ended up winning the league. And I got Devontae Adams, and without his production, I did the math, I would have lost the league and not won. So ended up being a league-winning decision for me. And anyways, the draft capital in this year's Dynasty leagues are not going to be fantastic. Draft boards are ugly, and it's a bit of a mess right now, but we're trying to make the best of it here and break things down. Essentially got a little bit off point there telling my story. But Kenneth Walker, if you're in the first three picks and you've got to decide between Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, you've got a headache on your hands because both of them carry a significant enough amount of risk that I'd be sweating up late at night, having nightmares about making the wrong decision. Personally, again, you see Breece Hall, I'm taking him by that paper-thin margin, but I could easily see Kenneth Walker coming out on top here and having a more prosperous NFL career because he's a dang good player, super explosive, and when he gets out in space, good luck catching this guy because he is a flash and dash type player. Rachaad White stays at my number 3 position here, so this is kind of crazy too. I had this impulsive decision where I loved Rachaad White early in my evaluation process, and then I kind of got away from him a little bit as I started to kind of creep towards consensus, if you will. I absolutely hate just following consensus, step by step throughout the process. I like to have my own opinions, but when you don't follow consensus, people come after you. So I'm going to work on sticking to my guns here because I ended up having the courage to come back on my Rachaad White take and plant him into my number 3 spot on the rankings. And lo and behold, he was the 3rd running back off the board to Tampa Bay. I was quite shocked to see the landing spot here, but I do see some reasons to like this. I love the player. He has a rare ability to get out in space and get off tackle, bounce it, runs out to the sideline. And I loved that on film. And then when I looked at his size, about 6'1", 215, I'm looking at a running back who could be a workhorse at the next level. He just needed an opportunity. Now, the reason that I like this situation is because, again, I do really like the player. He's my 3rd favorite prospect at the position in the class. Again, that's what I went back to over and over again in that pre-draft rankings assessment. And what I like here is despite Leonard Fournette being brought back by this team, he's only signed through the 2024 season. And he's a player who's approaching kind of the end of the road, if you will. We don't necessarily know when the tread's going to wear off the tires. It's a case-by-case scenario. It differs for every player. But he's going to be 30 at the end of that contract. So Leonard Fournette by no means is a spring chicken, and he's not some guy that's going to be out here handling the complete load of that Tampa Bay workhorse backfield like he was last season for the duration of that contract. So if he happens to get injured, if Rachaad White steps up to the plate and crushes it at camp, whatever the case might be, there is an opportunity for, again, this player who is able to get outside, bounce runs off the tackle, and have the size and speed combination. He runs a sub 4.5 40-yard dash, just barely below that, 4.48 to be exact. You're getting a guy that can give you a lot and bring, again, a lot to the table. So James Cook is my number 4 running back here in Dynasty Fantasy Football for this year's draft class. Now, James Cook for me is purely he's going to be a playmaking receiving back in this Buffalo Bills offense. I would absolutely love to see him get a load of the rushing volume and be used as a workhorse. But the size, to me, does not equate to that level of volume and that many touches in a per-game basis for James Cook. He is a lot more explosive, and to me, I can see a situation where he edges Devin Singletary quite a bit out of the situation here. He's not as good of an athlete as James Cook is. They're both very, very small players, but James Cook's got him by a little bit in that margin. The team showed us last year they don't trust Zach Moss to handle a large majority of touches and made him healthy scratches for multiple games last season. So James Cook has a legitimate option, or opportunity rather, to come into this offense and be the lead back, which again is to me not going to be a ton of volume, but for how explosive this guy is in space, a 4.42 40-yard dash in the receiving film that he put on tape at Georgia, having Josh Allen as your quarterback and the overall upside he gives to that offense, they're going to be moving the ball downfield, getting in, range to score points on almost every drive. This Bills offense is not someone I expect to, or a group that I expect to be punting the football a lot next season. Because of the weapons they have and the quarterback they have, James Cook is just more fuel to the fire. He's going to give you another option out in space to throw the football to. And again, if you get him out in space, he's lightning quick. I don't love him as 15 to 20 touches between the tackles per game type of a player, because I don't think his 5'11", 195-pound frame is going to hold up to that level of punishment over the course of a 17-game NFL season now. But there is a lot to like here. The situation, the landing spot, the fact that the Bills came up in the second round to get him, giving him some decent draft capital, all things I like to see there. Zamir White is my number 5 running back here, 6 feet tall, 215 pounds, and a 4.4 40-yard dash, so back-to-back Georgia running backs here. Athletically, this guy's a beast. He needs better blocking than some running backs do because he's not overly shifty. He's not going to make defenders miss. But again, he is kind of a freight train when he gets moving, because if he gets to the second or third level of the defense, good luck tackling this guy, because again, he is no small human being. He's much bigger than James Cook is. Again, these guys shared the backfield at Georgia together. The interesting part, and what gives me a lot of intrigue about this situation for Zamir White in Las Vegas with the Raiders, is the fact that the team declined to pick up former first-round pick in 2019, Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. I talked about this the other day in a YouTube short, so if you want to check that out, head over to the channel and just scroll down a few videos. I literally posted it, I think, 2 days ago. So I talk about the situation a little bit more. Again, it's a YouTube short, so it's an efficient video, and obviously you got a minute to put stuff in there. But Zamir White is somebody who has an opening to be the lead back in 2023 if the team just outright does not retain Josh Jacobs. So by not picking up that 5th-year option, they are neglecting to pay him. I believe a 5th-year option gives a player coming off the rookie deal the 10th highest paid salary to the player at that position. So, either Josh Jacobs is going to start driving a hard bargain in contract negotiations. I expected him to have a quality year this season, but now I don't love the fact that Zamir White could be kind of a 1-2 punch back with him this year. But again, 2023, as soon as next season, White could take over this backfield if the team just lets Jacobs walk and lets him off the hook. So big fantasy implications, potentially might never materialize, and Zamir White could end up just being a complimentary power back. Again, needs good blocking because he can't really create for himself out of the gun from the line of scrimmage. But definitely a situation to keep your eye on here. And if you've got one of those lower picks in, the second round, middle to late second round, someone to keep your eye on, because obviously the strength of this dynasty class is the wide receiver position. So those are the guys that are going to be going very early, with the exception of those top 2 running backs. So Isaiah Spiller at number 6 here is another player that I do see some utility for. Now, Isaiah is not a guy that is looking to get probably at any point in his career a lead job here in Los Angeles. But what I think that the Chargers situation provides him with is the opportunity to be a premier handcuff for Austin Eckler. Obviously, one of the most dynamic running backs in the National Football League, had 20 touchdowns last year, 1,500 plus yards from scrimmage. And Spiller here can work his way up into the fold as the second running back in this offense. And if that's the case, I can see him doing a lot of nice things. He is someone that is a fairly talented pass catcher, did get 4th-round draft capital from the Chargers here. So for a class that we saw the running back position be drafted very sparingly, there wasn't a ton of early investments. Again, no first-round pick at the position. He could, again, chug his way up the depth chart, become the number 2 player, be potentially kind of a change of pace, 4th quarter, pound the football out and win the game type of a player, where if you need a bigger body to come in, Austin Eckler's a pretty small dude. He is the strongest pound-for-pound player, so let's not discredit him too much, but Isaiah Spiller at 6 feet tall or 6'1", 215 pounds can come in there and put his shoulder down and move the pile a little bit more. That'll give him an avenue to get on the field. Maybe he snags a couple goal line touchdowns here and there. And again, he does have some ability to catch passes out of the backfield. So if he does get into that number 2 role, again, you're looking at an offense that has the potential to be a high level of having production and output statistically, which is great for fantasy players because that's basically what we're all about here. And that gives Spiller a lot more fantasy value than it does if he doesn't work his way up that depth chart. Dameon Pierce is someone who I very, very strongly considered having higher than Isaiah Spiller for the sole purpose that he might have an even better shot than a couple of the other players above him, particularly Zamir White, maybe an Isaiah Spiller, to get his way on the field and be a lead back for an NFL team this season. However, it's still no guarantee. He's probably going to come into camp as the RB3 for this Texans team, but he was PFF's highest graded running back during last college football season out of the University of Florida. There's a lot to like here. He does have that very closely aligned workhorse running back build, so you could see him getting out there, but I am a Marlon Mack guy. I don't want to discredit him too much. I think he's got a fair shot to get in there and get some touches. Rex Burkhead is also there as well, and he's, definitely not a prolific fantasy running back, but he is a guy who can kind of do it all and is a Swiss Army knife. Has utility as a pass catcher and as a average running back as well, which is why apparently they decided to feed him down the stretch. And nearly cost me a dynasty playoff game because Jonathan Taylor got absolutely outscored by like 3 or 4 times what Rex Burkhead had in production that week. So I would have been really salty about that still today had I not been able to pull that one through. But Dameon Pierce, again, very realistic shot that he could get onto the field. If he is the lead back for this Texans team, you do have to be relatively down to earth about your expectations for him. He's going to see a lot of volume if he does take over this lead role, but you probably can't expect that efficiency to be too great because this offense as a whole is going to be having negative game scripts. The Texans are still going to be a bad football team this year, and at the end of the day, if you're not really a balanced football team or someone that is keeping the defense honest with a consistent and reliable passing game, which I'm not ready to assess Davis Mills as the signal caller for this team as someone who's going to be able to do that on a week-to-week basis, that's going to have its imprint in a negative way on the run game as well. So I'm going to be reasonable and manage my expectations for Dameon Pierce here, but a really exciting player if you're looking to take a shot on the board at someone who could be a starter here this upcoming season. Tyler Allgeier, someone who got not fantastic draft capital here, a 5th-round draft pick by the Atlanta Falcons. But today, if you ask me, I think he is the most traditional running back on the Falcons roster, or at least the quote-unquote purest running back talent that they have in Atlanta. You've got Cordero Patterson, who's probably going to be leading the pack early on in the season. I think that the Falcons honestly might be better off with their really lacking receiving core. Split Cordero Patterson out wide. You can use him in the backfield here and there and, do your gadget stuff with him. but give Drake London and Kyle Pitts some help and just spread talent out on the field. Mike Davis is not getting the job done. Bring Tyler Allgeier in the backfield and use him. This is a guy who's not super explosive, only ran a 4.6 40-yard dash, but at 5'11", 220, he can be a thumper. He puts his shoulder down. He's a physical athlete in space. Again, like a Zamir White, he's not nearly as explosive. Again, runs 0.2 of a second slower than him on the 40-yard dash. But if you can get the proper blocking and get him into the second and third level, he is a size mismatch because of that physicality. A former linebacker knows how to use his body to his advantage to run people over. And he has, again, like a Dameon Pierce, he's a less talented player per se in terms of the athletic upside he has. But he's got kind of low barriers to entry here. Cordero Patterson, despite having such a good season last year, is kind of creeping up there in age, especially when you talk about running back, wide receiver hybrid who had one of the latest career fantasy breakouts of any player I've ever seen before. There's a lot of reasons that Tyler Allgeier can find his way onto the field, or at least can find some level of fantasy utility if he proves in camp and throughout the season that he is ready to, at bare minimum, split touches with someone in that Falcons backfield. Brian Robinson, someone who I loved coming into the draft process, and I was correct in my assessment of him pre-draft, my final pre-draft running back rankings. I had him as my RB4. Love the size, 6'1", 225, bruiser. Again, not super shifty or going to make anyone miss per se. But I thought he would be highly coveted in the draft because of his ability to pick up blockers in the pass game and to be a quality pass protector. Ding, ding, ding. I was right. Brian Robinson taken off the board. Well, the Washington football team didn't tell me that that's why they drafted him, but they did draft him early in relationship to the other running backs that were going off the board. Again, third-round pick. So he goes off the board early, which is a intriguing sign for fantasy owners. But then you look at the situation, and it's not really good at all. You've got Antonio Gibson, who today I still believe is the most coveted running back in the Washington Commanders front office. I think that they view him as their lead back. That's the guy they want on the field on first and second down, taking handoffs between the tackles, getting him out in space, using him in that fashion. Then you've got J.D. McKissic, who is going to be the scat back catching passes. Already mad at him for ghosting the Buffalo Bills. Now, it did give James Cook an opportunity to now have the pass-catching workload in that offense. But you're screwing my man Antonio Gibson over here, who's a former receiver, very capable skill set of being a pass catcher, has really nice size, light career workload, so the tread on the tires is still very thick. You've got a lot of lifespan left on Antonio Gibson's wheels. So you take away and eat a little bit into his value there. Now you bring Brian Robinson into the situation, who I'm already trying to, in my head, with my assessment of him as a pass protector and J.D. McKissic's value as a pass catcher on third down, I'm trying to find the role for Antonio Gibson on third down, and it's drying up like the desert here. And you've also got a situation where Brian Robinson is a huge human being, so the one time I really see him touching the football is third and short when you need someone to run the pile over, or goal line situations. And to me, this is just becoming a giant disaster of making all of the running backs in Washington suck. So I could not be less excited about drafting these players in fantasy this year. I think the talent is there. I think the player is there. But I think the situation just became a whole lot for the Washington football team, for their purposes as an organization. Sure, it's a great backfield. You constructed 3 different players, very drastically different talents, and guys can all contribute in their own unique ways. But for fantasy, that freaking sucks, because now you're looking at no workhorse. The pass-catching volume is being snatched up by someone outside the situation, and the guy that maybe is going to get the first and second down work, Antonio Gibson, may now see somebody eating into his goal line usage. So, terrible situation. I'm going to be done ranting about that because it's upsetting to me. Tyrion Davis-Price at the number 10 spot here, one of the most interesting names on the board, if you ask me. A third-round pick, good draft capital here. The reason I've got him down here at number 10 is because I'm going to give Elijah Mitchell the benefit of the doubt as Kyle Shanahan looks at him as their lead back here heading into next season. But if I know Kyle Shanahan, I've been watching Kyle Shanahan very closely since that Super Bowl year as an offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, you can trace him back, and obviously his schematics to his dad, Mike Shanahan, from the He coached my man Shannon Sharp with the Denver Broncos. But if I am a Elijah Mitchell fan, sure, if you're an Elijah Mitchell fan, but more importantly, a dynasty owner of Elijah Mitchell, I am currently on the edge of my seat, stirring, having nightmares, sweating, being very uncomfortable with the situation. Tyrion Davis-Price makes me very angsty about this 49ers backfield, because if I know Kyle Shanahan, like I just talked about, this dude does not have emotional attachment to his running backs, and he is going to run them and piss pound them into the dirt until they can't run anymore. And that is why he came out and drafted a 6 foot tall, 232-pound running back that runs a 4.48 40-yard dash. Now, this dude is not the most dynamic, prolific guy out in space. He's a north and south runner, but he is a bowling ball, and he will run people over. He plays smash mouth football, and to me, this draft choice was intended to be everything that Trey Sermon failed to be last year. And this pick, unfortunately, for a lot of people who invested probably first-round draft capital into Trey Sermon, who people could have had a hot take as their RB2 last year ahead of Travis Etienne if they hated that situation so much. It's probably more realistic that he was your RB3 or 4. Nonetheless, that pick is probably flopped now. This is too similar of a build, and the traits of what he brings to the table, that being Davis-Price, are too similar to what Trey Sermon was supposed to do well as the lead back for San Francisco last season, when we were all expecting that all Trey Sermon had to do was overcome Raheem Mostert and wait for him to get injured, which happened, boom, week 1. And then we're like, who's this Elijah Mitchell guy? Which, yes, we knew who Elijah Mitchell was, but we were wondering why the heck is he on the field and not Trey Sermon? All besides the point. I'm scared if I'm an Elijah Mitchell owner, which I am not, because I hate being an owner of San Francisco running backs, but this guy could turn into quite the fantasy asset. If he so happens to get out there, if Mitchell gets hurt, he's a smaller running back. We've talked all offseason long about how he's a bit small for Shanahan's offense and how we don't know if he's going to be able to stand up to those touches. He started to get banged up at the end of last year, and now, again, 232 pounds. This dude is a big boy. North and south runner. If he gets out in space, he's going to put his shoulder down and absolutely punish a safety or a corner that tries to tackle him. Didn't have the greatest season at LSU, because the Tigers just didn't have a great season this year. But fascinating stuff if you're going to keep an eye on the San Francisco situation, which we're going to have to, because we know things change like that with Kyle Shanahan and his running backs. So at number 11, I've got Keaontay Ingram, a player I loved heading into the draft, but 6th round capital, not fantastic. Again, if you missed it there, Tyrion Davis-Price had a 3rd round draft capital. So despite not touching the ball a ton at LSU last year, or despite not having prolific production, I should say, still got that investment, which tells me a little something about what they see him as a player. Keaontay Ingram, again, though, 6th round draft pick. I've seen, excuse me, on tape, he reminds me of a little bit of a Kareem Hunt here. You've got a guy who reads his blockers very well, flows through the run game very effectively to the proper place. When he sees the hole, he's able to find it, and he's a load to tackle out in space. I thought he definitely had potential to be a 3-down back, depending on where he landed here, catches the football well, in addition to his very quality attributes he brings to the table as a runner. But the landing spot wasn't great. The Cardinals just brought back James Conner on a 3-year contract. It's kind of a similar situation to Rachaad White, except I feel a lot more confident in Rachaad White, the player, than I do Keaontay Ingram. Although, again, I really think his skill set is interesting and could potentially materialize into something. But at best case scenario here, you're looking at the handcuff to James Conner, which is a valuable role in this Cardinals offense. I do see a lot of similarities between the two as players. And Chase Edmonds is gone now. So you're looking at, he is not similar to Chase Edmonds, so I don't expect him to take on that role that Chase had as the scat back for this Cardinals air raid system, which, by the way, started to run the ball a lot more last year. I liked that a lot as an element of this team. But It's unlikely, I would say, that Keaontay Ingram ever becomes a 3-down starter unless James Conner were to suffer a season-ending injury, which obviously we are not rooting for. And if that were the case, he would have to take over and have a really strong showing to win that job outright going forward, again, especially because that draft capital happened to be so low. So Keaontay Ingram, someone to keep your eye on late as a sleeper in these drafts, but not someone that certainly has any guarantees in his outlook. And then Jerome Ford, I went back and forth to this one. I really considered, Tyler Beatty for this spot. I think he's the best pass catcher in that Ravens backfield, which I actually think is an underrated role that team provides and brings to the table. But the committee is such a turnoff for me in Baltimore that I decided to just go with the player that I think is the better player, that being Jerome Ford. Terrible landing spot, though, when you're sitting behind Kareem Hunt. The best case scenario when Hunt is a free agent next season would be that he becomes the handcuff to Nick Chubb. But if Kareem Hunt walks, it's probably likely that they draft another running back. So little to nothing is guaranteed here for Jerome Ford. Again, a former Alabama recruit, someone that played for that football team but then transferred to the Cincinnati Bearcats. I like his size. I mean, at 5'11", 220, he does have the potential to be a workhorse because he has that frame, and he has, requisite skill set or a requisite skill set to be a 3-down player. Going along with that size and speed out in space is very nice as well. But you're not surpassing Nick Chubb anytime soon. And if Kareem Hunt walks, that's great. You're the handcuff to Nick Chubb, which is a valuable enough role. But this team's probably not going to run the football as much. If we're being completely honest, they have a great offensive line still, but they're not going to have to be so dependent on the play-action game and running the football as they were with Baker Mayfield, because now you've got Deshaun Watson, and that opens up the pass game a lot. So Jerome Ford's a nice player. I wish he would have found a better landing spot. There were some other guys who just had unfortunate situations they landed into as well. In particular, I think that Ty Chandler was one of my favorite prospects in this year's draft. Really speedy out in space, but he lands, in Minnesota, and now he's a third stringer behind Dalvin Cook and Alex Madison, who was a proven handcuff and backup there. And then Pierre Strong, one of the better small school prospects at the running back position, lands in New England, and they have running backs just falling out of everywhere on every crevice of that organization. There are running backs spewing out of James White, Dameon Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, now Pierre Strong. Good Lord, they had J.J. Taylor in there last year. I mean, they have a ridiculous amount of running backs in New England. So, unfortunate landing spots happens every year. I feel like the running back crop for this season didn't really have great landing spots, to be honest. I felt like I was underwhelmed. Like last year, Najee Harris, boom, perfect situation, fantastic fit. Even the year before that, you've got guys like Jonathan Taylor falling to the Colts. How did that happen? I mean, a perfect dream situation there. And for a while, it looked like some of those other 2020 running backs were going to be in great situations. But this year was not so much the case. Again, as we go back to Breece Hall or a Kenneth Walker, they've got really nice opportunity, a lot of upside. But you're looking at little to no guarantees. I mean, to an extent, I think that they're both going to get on the field, high draft capital. They're going to see touches, but will they get that juicy 20-plus number that we're all looking for and work in the receiving game is the big question for Breece Hall. So if you guys enjoyed today's video, thank you so much for sticking with me. Remember to drop down, click that like button, and subscribe if you're new around here to the SFS channel. I cannot appreciate you guys more. I love making these videos. I've been making a lot of stuff on YouTube Shorts, so again, check those out. I post the same stuff on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and you'll see some unique posts on those platforms occasionally as well. Also, go check out my Twitter account at Sizzle Fantasy. I changed the username because the default one that Twitter gave me when I first opened the account, I didn't like it. It was at Fantasy Sizzle. Now it's at Sizzle Fantasy. So we just did a little flip-flop there. Go check me out on Twitter. I would really appreciate that. And check out the community Discord server. I'm going to start doing mock drafts now. We've got landing spots. I don't love doing mock drafts or rookie drafts officially prior to knowing landing spots and all this good stuff. So I'll start doing that stuff now, pumping out those videos, hopefully a couple times a week. Startup drafts, redraft mocks as well. All that good stuff. If you're in the community Discord server, you're going to get invites to those. Following me on Twitter as well. I'll be tweeting those links out. So check that stuff out. See you guys next time. Thank you so much. Peace out.